Let's do this. It's doing Progressive Friday night. Checking out headlines, feeling good things. Motherfucking hell. Forgetting lighters. Doing a real good start this out. Alright. Think I got a lighter in here. Ooh, got a pen. That's fun. So, gonna get stoned, chill, watch some news, see if we can do some basic debunking, just some basic bullshitting, bullshit callers. That's what I try to do, yo. It's my bullshit detector out, and all sorts of pens. That pen, but we got a lighter. But first, we're gonna watch some headlines, catch up on mainstream media's talking points, and as close to mainstream media as I will get is going to be Amy Goodman. That's as close as I get. So, to start, we'll start out with some Amy Goodman. A nice freshly packed bowl of London pound cake. My last full nug. Got enough for a chillum left. And we'll be doing a taste tester through the night of LA Kush cake. Never had that one. Sounds good. Shut up. And hazelnut cream. Again, two things that sound more like coffee drinks than flower types, but they were high in the THC levels, and there's a very good deal today. 40% off, so had to go for it. Go for that top tier when it's 40% off, right? So let's do some headlines and do some taste testing today.
DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Russia's military says the flagship of its Black Sea fleet, the guided missile cruiser Moskva, which stands for Moscow, sank as it was being towed to port Thursday, forcing some 500 sailors to abandon ship. The loss of the Moskva was reported hours after Ukraine's military claimed it had successfully attacked the warship with cruise missiles. Russia contends the ship was damaged after a fire caused ammunition on board to explode. This comes as the Washington Post is reporting the Russian government has formally warned the Biden administration to stop arming Ukraine, claiming it's adding fuel to the conflict. Russia has warned the governments of Finland and Sweden against joining NATO, saying it's prepared to station more nuclear weapons in the Baltic Sea region in response to further NATO expansion. The threat came as CIA Director William Burns told lawmakers they should not discount the threat of Russia potentially using tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine out of desperation. We'll have more on the war in Ukraine after headlines. In occupied East Jerusalem, more than 150 people were injured after Israeli soldiers attacked Palestinian worshippers inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque shortly after morning prayers Friday. Witnesses said troops fired tear gas, rubber-coated bullets, concussion grenades into the holy site's prayer halls and courtyards.
Jesus.
They brutally emptied the compound. They were attacking the employees, normal people, elders, and young people. There were many people injured. They fired rubber bullets inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. They were beating everyone, even the paramedics.
One local hospital received 40 injured Palestinians, including 2 in critical condition. Israeli troops rounded up and arrested at least 300 people. The raid follows a series of attacks by Palestinians and Arab citizens of Israel that have killed people inside Israel since March 22nd. Meanwhile, Israeli raids on West Bank towns and villages have killed 29 Palestinians since March. Among the dead are a 34-year-old Palestinian lawyer who was shot in the chest Wednesday and a 14-year-old boy killed by Israeli troops who accused him of throwing a Molotov cocktail. 6 United States senators have arrived in Taiwan for a surprise visit, prompting an angry response from China. The delegation says it's planning 2 days of talks on U.S.-Taiwan relations and regional security. New Jersey Democrat Bob Menendez, who chairs the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, spoke after he was welcomed by Taiwan's president.
With Taiwan producing 90% of the world's high-end semiconductor products, it is a country of global significance, of global consequence, of global impact. And therefore, it should be understood that the security of Taiwan has a global impact for those who would wish it ill.
In response, China's military sent naval ships, bombers, and fighter planes to the East China Sea for war games. In a statement, the People's Liberation Army warned, quote, U.S. bad actions and tricks are completely futile and very dangerous. Those who play with fire will burn themselves, unquote. The British government's announced it could soon resettle some asylum seekers to Rwanda as an attempt to deter more people from attempting to reach Britain for refuge. Prime Minister Boris Johnson spoke Thursday.
This innovative approach, driven by our shared humanitarian impulse and made possible by Brexit freedoms, will provide safe and legal routes for asylum while disrupting the business model of the gangs.
Human rights groups condemned the plan as shockingly ill-conceived. Amnesty International UK said in a statement, quote, sending people to another country, let alone one with such a dismal human rights record, for asylum processing is the very height of irresponsibility and shows how far removed from humanity and reality the government now is on asylum issues, unquote. In Michigan, the family of Patrick Laloya is demanding the white Grand Rapids police officer who killed the 26-year-old Congolese refugee be fired and charged with a crime. City officials have yet to name the officer who's seen on video pulling his service pistol from a holster and firing a fatal shot into Loyoya's head after a struggle. Patrick's father, Peter Loyoya, said through an interpreter he and his family had escaped war and persecution in the Democratic Republic of Congo, only to see Patrick killed like an animal by Michigan police.
Roho yangu inavunjika kabisa.
My heart is really deeply broken.
Sikuwa najua kama katika hii nchi
I didn't believe that in this country
kama kuko genocide.
that there was a genocide in this country.
Sikukuwa najua.
I didn't know.
Sikukuwa najua kama hapa mwa nchi
I didn't know that here in America
kunaweza kuwa execution ya mtu kwa kumuua.
there can be an execution style to kill someone.
Patrick Laloya's family.
Again, being from Michigan, knowing friends and family in Grand Rapids, this kills me. Not like, I guess. I mean, I shouldn't say that, huh? This destroys my heart. Tears me apart.
Was standing next to their lawyer, Ben Crump. Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis has signed a bill banning most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. It's modeled after the Mississippi abortion law that the Supreme Court is currently weighing and which could essentially undo Roe v. Wade. In a statement, NARAL Pro-Choice America called Florida's abortion ban a, quote, shameless step towards what could be a terrifying new future for reproductive freedom in the country, unquote. A jury in Washington, D.C. has found an Ohio man guilty of felony obstruction of Congress after he joined the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. 38-year-old Dustin Thompson did not contest charges that he stole a bottle of whiskey and a coat rack from the Senate parliamentarian's office and rammed from a police officer seeking to question him. Thompson's defense hinged on his claim that he was following presidential orders when he was swept up in the Capitol riot. He's the third January 6th insurrectionist to be found guilty by a jury. His conviction came as former senior Trump advisor Stephen Miller was questioned for 8 hours Thursday by the House Committee investigating the January 6th attack. Miller reportedly refused to answer questions about his conversations with Trump, claiming executive privilege. The Republican National Committee has voted to withdraw from the Commission on Presidential Debates. Thursday's unanimous vote by the RNC came after numerous complaints by ex-President Trump over debate formats and the Commission's choice of moderators. The Commission was formed by the Democratic and Republican parties in 1987 and quickly took control of the debates from the nonpartisan League of Women Voters. The Commission has allowed just one third-party candidate, Ross Perot, to participate in.
And we'll never let them happen again. Never. I've been too busy freaking doing all this. I gotta fucking slow it down so I have time to smoke my bowl. Trying to get all this shit set up. Sharing my post and blah, blah, blah. I'm not a social media person.
Presidential debates. A bipartisan group of over 100 Texas lawmakers have joined calls to stop the execution of Melissa Lucio, who is scheduled to die in less than 2 weeks. Lucio says she was wrongfully convicted of killing her 2-year-old daughter Mariah after a tragic accident in 2007. Attorneys say Lucio faced a lifetime of abuse, was pressured to make a false confession, and didn't get a fair trial. This week, lawmakers asked the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles to grant Lucio clemency after a hearing in which they called on the district attorney to cancel her April 27th execution date. Cameron County District Attorney Luis Sanz testified, if Lucio does not get a stay, quote, then I will do what I have to do to and stop it. Former trial juror Johnny Galvin also testified via his daughter that he opposed Lucio's execution.
The idea that my decision to take another person's life was not based on complete and accurate information in a fair trial is horrifying.
Would be the first Latina woman executed by Texas. Next week, the state plans to execute 77-year-old Carl Wayne Bunchen, the oldest person on Texas death row. In labor news, workers at 2 El Milagro tortilla plants in Chicago have won wage increases and other victories after months of fighting for better working conditions. The tortilla manufacturer said it would end a 7-day work week, but workers are reporting El Milagro has yet to fulfill the demand to be closed on Sundays. El Milagro will now also provide anti-sexual harassment training for managers, air conditioning in the lunchrooms, and has promised to improve its sick day policy. But workers have vowed to keep organizing until the company prioritizes worker safety and respect and agrees to their other demands. And here in New York City, a coalition of union leaders and workers led a protest Thursday outside the $40 million penthouse of Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, denouncing the corporation's ongoing retaliation and firing of workers trying to unionize. Among the speakers at the rally were Charles Jenkins, president of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, and Larry Holmes of the Workers' Assembly Against Racism.
We demand the right, but not some workers, to be unionized like me. What we demand all workers have a right to unionize. All of your union busting, the Starbucks workers are just getting angrier. Just organizing more stores. And if you keep your union busting up, all you're gonna do is wake up a sleeping giant, the working class in this country.
Despite an aggressive union-busting campaign by Starbucks, thousands of workers at some 220 shops have filed for union elections, including a Starbucks at Mall of America. A total of 22 Starbucks stores have successfully unionized across the country. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Hi, Juan.
And then they're going to go into some more propaganda bullshit. Or whatever. I'm not going to keep going with these people, right? That was our Main Street Media News for the day. Let's hit up a couple other things, obviously. Let's move on. There's an interesting conversation today, or a couple days ago, and I wanted to listen to the whole thing. I wanted to take clips out of it. It's just so hard to pick one segment or two segments, so we're going to listen to one, though. But I wanted to introduce it with why I follow this person. And like literally this clip is one of the most like just lit clips, and after I watched it I basically was addicted to her as a journalist. Like I wanted to hear anything she had to say. And so her name is Ava Bartlett. She does amazing work in Syria, amazing work in she's mostly in the Middle East. She's been she taught herself Arabic when she decided to become a journalist. She studied and learned Arabic so she could, because that's where she thought the most misinformation was happening. So she studied journalism. She does journalism. She studied Arabic. She was never a journalist. She was an art major. But this is why this clip.
Very much. Now we are open to questions if there are questions. The gentleman in the back.
Thank you very much. I'm Christopher Ronneberg with the Norwegian newspaper Aftenposten. A question for, or two questions for Ms. Bartlett here. As a journalist, I'm sure you can appreciate getting other impressions than empirical impressions from the ground. When you talk about the Syrian people and what the Syrian people want, how can you quantify that? Do you have any independent surveys where you can actually document that? And secondly, you talk about the corporate media, the Western media, the lies, and all of this. Could you explain what you think might be the agenda from us in the Western media, and why we should lie, why the international organizations on the ground should lie, why we shouldn't believe all these absolutely documentable facts that we see from the ground. These hospitals being bombed, these civilians who are talking about the atrocities that they have been experiencing. How can you justify calling all of us liars?
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, there are certainly honest journalists amongst the very compromised establishment media. Let's start with your second question. So, international organizations on the ground. Tell me which ones are on the ground in eastern Aleppo. Yeah, okay, I'll tell you, there are none. There are none. These organizations are relying on the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is based in Coventry, UK, and which is one man. They're relying on compromised groups like the White Helmets, which let's talk about the White Helmets.
Let's talk about them.
The White Helmets were founded in 2013 by a British ex-military officer. They have been funded to the tune of $100 million by the US, UK, and Europe and other states. They purport to be rescuing civilians in eastern Aleppo and Idlib, yet no one in eastern Aleppo has heard of them. And I say no one, bearing in mind that now 95% of these areas of eastern Aleppo are liberated. The White Helmets purport to be neutral, yet they can be found carrying guns and standing on the dead bodies of Syrian soldiers. And their video footage actually contains children that have been recycled in different reports. So you can find a girl named Aya who turns up in a report in month, say, August, and she turns up in the next month in 2 different locations. So they are not credible. The SOHR is not credible. Unnamed activists are not credible. Once or twice, maybe, but every time, not credible. So your sources on the ground, you don't have them. As for your agenda, not your...
Oh, that's one of my favorite lines. Your sources on the ground, you don't have them.
But the agenda of some corporate media, it is the agenda of regime change. How can the New York Times, I was reading it this morning, or how can Democracy Now!, which I was reading the other day, maintain until this day that this is a civil war in Syria? How can they maintain until this day that that the protests were unarmed and nonviolent until, say, 2012? That is absolutely not true. How can they maintain that the Syrian government is attacking civilians in Aleppo when every person that's coming out of these areas occupied by terrorists is saying the opposite? So that's with regards to your question on lying Western media. How do I quantify the support of the Syrian people? The elections. In 2014, the Syrian people held elections. The voter turnout was 88%, including people in Lebanon, where I was during the elections in Lebanon, which were actually ran for 2 days, extended hours, people walking for kilometers to reach the embassy, including people who flew from their own countries like mine, which has criminally shut the Syrian embassy so that Syrian people have no rights, and including people within Syria who braved a torrent of terrorist mortars and missiles on election day. And yet, voter turnout rate was something like 88%, I believe. And then the election, the results were 78, I believe. I might,
Tim Anderson gives you the opposite.
okay, I might get the turnout wrong. So the results. 74 participate, 88. Okay. Anyway, the point being, overwhelmingly, the people support President Assad. That's based on elections, based on my own travels. Okay, so that's subjective. But as I said, I've traveled around Syria, talked with people of all faiths, all walks of life, and there are people that want change in the government. We're not pretending they don't want change. Everybody wants change. But in terms of support of the government, the point is they don't see President Assad as the problem. They see the problem as terrorism. They see elements of problems in the system that they have there. But President Assad, they don't see as the problem. They actually overwhelmingly support him. So I'm basing it on their choice in their leader, and I'm basing it on my interactions with people in Syria and Lebanon.
You talk about the corporate.
Oh, she just eviscerates him. All right, I want to watch that a lot. It's one of my favorite clips ever. We're going to watch that every once in a while. But she had a conversation that was pretty good. Talking reality theories with Arika Dahlner, the amazing creative mind of art with aim. So the creative mind of art with aim. She's just, they just had a good conversation, and they went through a few topics, but I thought this little bit here was worth having a listen to, so I thought we should check that out.
Seeing that fear taking place. It's really hard for people like us to wait for that type of awakening that other people require a lot more time. But I do see that it is happening more and more. But I just want, like, these conversations for me, I think these types of radical, intimate conversations where you get to know the source of the information personally is going to be how we break through the fact that we've been lied to so incredibly. I mean, I think that that's part of it, is that the lie and has been so propped up and funded, while the opposition narrative is so completely canceled out and censored so extraordinarily that it's hard for people to even know where to get information or where to start to try to find information that's trustworthy, especially because you can't even Google it. Like, you can't, because it's already taken out.
Yeah. And then if you're
like,
on,
I can't even see RT. You work for RT, and I can't even see RT unless I use a VPN.
Yeah, and then if you do have a trusted source on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube or whatever, chances are they'll be taken down.
Exactly. I mean, I've been censored into oblivion, and I'm a nobody, and I'm censored.
Well,
So,
you're not a nobody, and next time we talk, I want to give you a chance to talk at length about your research and a lot of the issues. Like, you made a reference to Epstein. I don't think we have time today, but I definitely want you to.
Man, this is what I was saying. It's so much that I could talk about with you because you're so knowledgeable and easy to talk to, and I feel that this could be a very productive long-term conversation between us, because or reality theories, a think tank between the two of us.
Yep. Well, so on that note, Erica, let's wrap it up for today, and plan to talk again in a week. And this time, get more into what you've been researching, the pertinent issues of today, and also some positive things. Like, I know you've been doing a lot of gardening, but let's save that for next week. And yeah, thanks so much.
This was really fun. I was nervous about it because I respect you so much. I was like, oh my God, what can I bring to the table? But like,
what?
It's like,
I'm just me.
I get nervous.
I'm just Eva who grew up in Fergus. That's it.
I know, but you're a woman.
So I hope they do have more conversations, and I can, check out Ava Bartlett again. Always check her out. If you want to see what she had to say this whole conversation, it was an hour and a half up to that point, and it's a slow conversation, but it's definitely the kind of thing that if you're if you're a news junkie, which I'm guessing anybody popping in here is, and thanks for the follow, Hypocritical Luddite, thank you. But yeah, if you're a news junkie and you want to check some stuff out, this is a great conversation to listen to. They were very interesting people, and you can kind of they both kind of dive into the Ava, like. She was trying to make it about Ava was trying to make it about the other person, but the other person just kept talking about Ava's, turning into a qualified journalist. So yeah, it's worth a listen to. Give it a check, please. Give it a look over. Ava Bartlett. I wanted to check out this new podcast, Dosed with Abby Martin. I listened to a little bit of it and then I froze because I wanted to save it for my road trip, but I thought we could listen to that little bit that I enjoyed earlier with you guys. So we'll take a 10-15 minute spill down this little lane for a moment. But yeah, check out Ava Bartlett. Definitely a definite journalist that if you want to dig into her, she's kind of more on the libertarian side of things, although she doesn't take positions. She usually tries to stick with facts out of fiction. Doesn't even try to debunk. She just she doesn't pay attention to the mainstream narrative. Ex-Canadian.
Woman that Canadian. Has incredible.
Oops. Right. Moving on. Moving on.
So, Peter, I'm so happy that you are my first guest on this show because Media Roots Radio.
40. There we go.
Really quickly, what does being dosed mean? No, I'm not talking about dropping acid, although that is one way to do it. It's much more broad than a nod to psychedelics. Dosed is a reimagination, if you will, of being red-pilled, which is kind of a passé term that now applies to partisan politics. For me, dosed really just means having an epiphany, learning something that changes the way you view the world, deepens your perspective and understanding, and it really can apply to anything: art, science, philosophy, and of course, politics. So keep this in mind when you call in later in the episode to share what has dosed you. That's why I'm so excited to have the founder of the Zeitgeist Movement, author of the New Human Rights Movement, host of the podcast Revolution Now, and the creator of the new-ish epic mixed genre film, Inner Reflections, Peter Joseph, on Dosed today. Peter, I am so happy to have you with us.
This is Dosed, host by Abby Martin, with Peter Joseph, in parentheses, the Zeitgeist Movement, which is his first movies he did. He's now done another movie, another docuseries, and yeah, one of my favorite persons to listen, to listen to. Much better at speaking to words than this jackass here. Although I am getting stoned during this whole thing, that's kind of the point, is even someone that's baked can see through the bullshit.
Hey, Abby and Mike, thank you very much.
This
I
isn't
appreciate
bullshit.
that, and congratulations on the new communicative venture. I like it. It's a great style. Good.
So, Peter, I'm so happy that you are my first guest on this show because, not only do I think you're a brilliant visionary and one of the most important intellectuals of our time, your work has completely dosed the fuck out of me over and over and over again throughout my life. It's helped radicalize me as a young adult. It's set me on the path I am today, and it continues to guide my understanding of the world and my place in it. I mean, let's just go back to Zeitgeist. I know that you only...
So that's literally the movie that, like, I was on a documentary binge, probably watched like 30 documentaries in a winter or whatever. Just every night we were watching one, and I'd say 30. I'd say easily 30 over that winter, on every single topic. So yeah, probably more like 50 to 100 documentaries, and that the 100 would be more realistic than the 50. Because we'd watch a dozen documentaries on every topic. You'd hear one topic, you go down a food hole, you watch 2 or 3 documentaries on food one night, get sick of it. Next, like 2 or 3 nights later, you'd watch 3 documentaries on, and towards the end of that, I watched the Zeitgeist movie and then Addendum, and that kind of summarized like a week's worth of documentaries for us. And I was like, Jesus, why do I need to watch all those movies when I could have just watched this one? And so that's what I tell people. It's like watching a week's worth of documentaries.
Intended it as this artistic expression and nothing more. But for people who don't really know the profound influence that this film had, I mean, the original Zeitgeist was so transformative for so many. Look, this was seen not only a million times, not only 10 million or 100 million. I mean, potentially, we're talking about maybe 1 billion people that have caught wind of the themes that you presented in Zeitgeist, Peter, and it's just incredible. I mean, it was something so much bigger than you, of course, but I think that it really spoke to this moment in time, to the Zeitgeist, if you will. The Bush era was such an intense time. This film captured this kind of collective outrage that had built up, I think, around the political and media establishment's post 9/11 myth-making. The religion part was mind-blowing, even though I didn't grow up religious. And it was dropped at a time when videos became viral on their own, believe it or not, when algorithms didn't drive what is and what is not seen. And the ultra-viral nature of that movie was completely organic. I mean, clearly it provided something that people were very much craving at that moment in time. And then, of course, you continued the series with the second and third equally fascinating editions and are actually working on a 4th chapter now. But following your trajectory, your work thereafter, especially the New Human Rights Movement, synthesized so much for me about the structural nature of our problems. And I've really never heard anyone give a more convincing case against capitalism, which of course we're going to focus on. But first, Peter, I think our audience would really be interested to know, what is an early dosed moment for you?
Well, first, I appreciate the kind words and the introduction. And Zeitgeist, of course, was a very strange moment because it wasn't intended, as you pointed out. Most people, when they put forward a communicative work, they have a strategy in mind to release it and to hope people pay attention to it. And usually there's an agenda of some kind, often monetary for folks. And that film had none of that and wasn't even supposed to be released at all. So put that aside for the moment. In terms of your question, which we can circle back around to Zeitgeist, I've been pondering the dosed premise all day as I thought about your podcast here, and I was reflecting in my mind, the sequence of events that sort of paints the picture or the structure of what I am at this point in time. And it's less of a spontaneous thing and more of a gradual thing. Nothing particularly revelatory in an immediate sense, but I did recall this one moment when I was a kid, and I think this is just something that maybe other people might have experienced at some point. When I was maybe 7 or so, and I was turning this corner with my mother in a car, and the sun was blazing in the American South, and I had, for the first time in my life, a sense of realization or a sense of questioning of what the fuck am I? Like, what am I? Like, I scared the shit out of my mother because, so I started asking her all these ridiculous philosophical questions, and she's sitting there staring at me. And it was one of those things I related to what's called theory of mind. It's not directly related, but I don't know if you're aware of this as a mom. When your kid gets to be between 3 and 5, the child will start to realize that other organisms have thinking processes that are different from their own, that there's an autonomousness to other living things, and that's called theory of mind. And this was kind of an existential theory of mind. I'll never forget that memory, though. It really stuck with me. And then I kind of, went through the normal childhood, more or less, had poverty experiences that still stick in my mind. Of course, my mother was a social worker. She dealt with people in poverty and deprivation. So I had a lot of feedback from that world, both academically and in my normal rural existence, which was a pretty poor area. And I was fortunate, and I think the inflection point for me was really the privilege of going to a collective arts school, an international arts school, when I was about 13 years old, up through high school and then off to college in New York, which I eventually dropped out of. But in that period of time, I went to this art school in the American South. I was detached away from the traditional forms, the traditional educational process, the rote learning, and of course the homogeneity of the American South, which, it's just like any place that isn't super metropolitan. You have a kind of general culture. It tends to get stagnant and all of that. You have racism and bigotry and all those things that you will eventually absorb as a child if you're not exposed to other things. So I went to this art school as a musician, and I got to meet tons of people across the whole spectrum of creativity and, of course, lifestyle and everything else. And that was a very important point, which is why I always encourage anyone out there raising kids to, the arts and the sciences go together as one, and you have to start to get that into people's consciousness at the earliest age so it creates a flexibility in their understanding. And I was very fortunate to have that, I think, anyway. At least that's what I attribute it to. So then we jump ahead to New York. I'm living in New York, and I'm literally working as after I dropped out of the conservatory there because I didn't want to be an orchestral musician. I was going to try to do something more ambitious with my musical interests. But that was my focus. So I had to moonlight in all sorts of other ways as I tried to build a career in music. And I started working I worked on Wall Street, not literally, even though I was in New York City. I study with actual traders in this period of time in my early 20s, trying to find a way basically to break away from the hierarchies of society intuitively. I don't really even know what I was thinking at that time. I just knew I didn't want to have a boss. And it's just a common reaction. In fact, a lot of these people you'll meet in the trading world were like me. They don't understand what they're doing in the darkness of what they're a part of, which I'll get to in a moment, because this is another important inflection point for me. But it's really a reaction to not to have to deal with the corporate structure. That's why people want to be independent traders. That's the most core motivation aside from the greed and all that, which builds on its own. So I ended up doing that simultaneously working in advertising. So I had these two jobs I did parallel, two of the worst things on the face of the earth as far as I'm concerned, advertising and Wall Street.
Two of the most beneficial industries.
Yeah, complete void industries, which again we can build upon in a little while, because they are important staples to understand the character of civilization today, and getting worse and worse, unfortunately, in the evolution or the adaptation of our social system, which we can talk about more so as well. But in this environment, I started to really reflect on the social systems. Like, why am I getting paid this money to create little movies for extreme wealthy people to buy $400 million penthouses in Central Park, and why am I also gambling in this little arena here, which seems to have all sorts of money that comes out of nowhere, in order to just be self-serving and not contribute anything to society? Why are these two of the most lucrative industries on the face of the earth is the question, or at least in America, which is probably the face of the earth as well. And that's really what started me down the rabbit hole of starting to question what the hell is going on. And that was the period of time when I began to develop Zeitgeist as a fourth occupation, so to speak. During that period of time, again, I was working 3 jobs basically, and then in the evenings I'd come back and I would work on this little project of my own. No particular
Projects.
no particular intent, as I said earlier. And that is when it hit in 2007. In fact, it'll almost be 15 years this summer that film has been out, which is shocking to think about. And it was released, and I just could not believe. Well, here's the funny thing: if you're familiar with New York City, you have a thing called the Village Voice, and the Village Voice is a free periodical they put out with events. And I remember following at 4 a.m. the Village Voice buses, these trucks, and I would put little cards for the Zeitgeist showing in every single Village Voice, like thousands of them. That's how ridiculous I was in promoting this thing from the grassroots level. And so on the 6-night run, which was completely free, it was all full of tourists, believe it or not. So and the dynamic in the room, it was only like a little 50-seat theater in Chinatown, but the dynamic was really interesting day after day because people would leave, people would come back. It was a great tension in given this is a live performance piece with me performing literally instruments with these 2 giant screens that showed the film simultaneously. That was the original version of it. So
wait. So you were how long did you do this?
It was a 6-night run.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, again, it was free. It was in Chinatown. It was like this ridiculous walk up, like a 6-flight walk up to this tiny little black box theater. And so the thing, unfolded, and it was actually, very interesting. Again, some people hated it, obviously, and some people really were into it. And I had a lot of unique inquiries. But at that point, I just gave up on it. I was like, okay, I got to go back to my normal job. I shelved it. And it was at that time when Google Video came out. And this is the other interesting thing I don't think I've talked about much to people regarding this evolution. You might remember in 2006, 2007, Google had a campaign, billboards that said, Google Zeitgeist.
What?
Yeah, so remember, this was their kind of like TED Talk project, and they had this program they developed. I think they'd started around like 2002 or something, but it wasn't really that established yet. Maybe a little bit later, but it was Google Zeitgeist. It was very popular. I never thought about this, but when that thing hit on Google Video, which was uploaded to, just thrown up there, that I had no legal clearance for that film whatsoever. Like, it's completely and utterly illegal. And I didn't, again, I expected it just to be a little archive online, whatever. People want to watch it. It's not a big deal. I'm not selling anything, whatever. But Google Zeitgeist was happening simultaneously. And when that thing hit viral on Google Video, it shot my website to the very top of the search engine. So when people literally Googled Zeitgeist, they got me. I hijacked.
Instead of Webster's dictionary, it was like.
Yeah, well, what I mean is I literally hijacked their entire PR campaign because remember, it's Google Zeitgeist. And so Zeitgeist, that's one of the reasons I think it got a weird kind of which, I think it would have gotten momentum anyway. But I think a lot of people, they Googled Zeitgeist, just like they saw on that billboard, but they got, zeitgeistmovie.com. It was hilarious. I'm actually really surprised that Google didn't try to, restrict it. But the viral nature of that was so robust that I don't think they could get away with it. And, internet censorship wasn't as bad as it is now anyway. So that's how that kind of emerged. I can go into more detail as to what went into that project, but we can step back a moment and go from there.
That's fascinating. I had no idea that was part of that simultaneous display of Google. At the time, it was kind of this.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I mean, I didn't catch on to it until like 2010 or something like that, so it had already been 2009, 2010 area, somewhere in that ballpark. Probably 2009. So yeah, I guess it wasn't that bad. I guess caught it 2 years late for me. That's 2 years behind the trends. That's about right for me, I guess. But I was still ahead of everybody's curve because really, there's still people out there that haven't watched the movies. And then I gotta show it to them, like, come on, watch the movie. Zeitgeist movie, yo, it's amazing. It's very, very, very well done. And yeah, I don't know why I haven't seen it yet. Check it out. And with that note, I thought that was a good intro to that. It leaves me a nice hour to listen to new on the way up north. And hopefully she has a couple more for me to check out as well, because I got a lot of driving to do. I got a good 15, 20 podcasts worth of driving to do. All right, I think that was all for this. I'm going to check out my next clip here. Is going to be Dan Cohen on how disastrous Biden is swamped in an economic meltdown of his making. I'm a big fan of Dan Cohen and a big fan of George Galloway. This is George Galloway's show, and Dan Cohen is his fantastic, informative person who used to be on. I believe was he on Watching the Hawks, or I don't know. He was on an RT show, but he is no longer on that. So we got to support our ex-RT people.
Favorite American journalists and broadcasters, and I'm delighted to welcome him to the mother of all talk shows this evening. Dan, it's day 445, I think, of Joe Biden's presidency. The minimum wage is still $7.50. How has he been doing?
Well, if you believe the polls as well as reality, then Joe Biden has had a terrible presidency so far. I mean, some say it might be, one of, if not the worst president ever among them. I mean, his polls show it. He's hovering around 30%. So 70% of Americans do not approve of Joe Biden. He narrowly won against Trump, an incredibly unpopular president, largely thanks to the pandemic. Biden won. He's overseen a disastrous economic situation. Inflation is at its highest in 40 years.
And that is on the giving away of the money from the Fed to the wrong people. That's not world tide. Inflation is bigly tied to the World Bank, meaning the four biggest governments giving money away to the wrong people. During this pandemic, we flooded money to the wrong people, and now wealth is concentrated in a way that it fucks up inflation, and they haven't taxed the money that they sent out on a proper scale. Like, you need to send out money, but you need to tax it at a proper level, or else it will fuck up inflation, and they gave it to people who don't get taxed at all.
We have horrible poverty across the country. I think inflation's at like 8% now. Skyrocketing housing prices. So it's really just a disaster all around. And Biden's messaging has been that this is all Vladimir Putin's fault.
Jesus. Like 2 minutes in, I guarantee he's getting half his shit demonetized, and they're going to throw that stuff right there.
Your economic situation here in the U.S., if you're struggling, that it has nothing to do with the policies that, the Uniparty has enacted year after year and term after term. But this is all because Vladimir Putin decided to invade a peaceful, sovereign Woodstock 2022 in Kiev. And he's actually termed it Putin's price hike. And that's a reference to the massive increase in gas prices that are around $5 a gallon throughout the country, which, if you're wealthy, then that doesn't make a big difference to you. But for quite a large segment of the population here, that's makes it basically unbearable, where you can't get around and do your job or do basic things. So all of that anger and frustration, the Biden administration is trying to redirect again into support for basically a U.S. dirty war in Ukraine.
I wish it was $5 a gallon here in this country, Dan. I've got to tell you, British viewers will be scratching their head about that. But of course, $5 a gallon in America is a gargantuan price, because it's always been so historically low in your...
So historically, what do they call that? Subsidized in America. We pay tax dollars for that low cost of oil and gas. It's like 30 to 40% of a barrel goes in from tax dollars. So we keep it we keep it low on purpose. Compared to Europe and the rest of the world, it's because we subsidize it.
Country. The problem with that Joe Biden alibi is that the war in Ukraine is not even 2 months old. The American economy's problems predate it by a very, very long way.
Precisely. I mean, we've seen inflation skyrocketing over the past year. That was long before any Russian tank crossed over the border into Ukraine. These are a result of at-home economic policies and that basically have been a severe attack, just another severe attack on the American working class, on American poor people. I mean, I think about, you know, we've also had the destruction of the economy that came through lockdowns, where basically small businesses were forced to close for large amounts of 2020 when Trump was still president, and then into 2021. And you know, that destruction has not been rectified. People haven't been helped because of that. I think of my neighbor who was evicted from his home along with 12 other people in his family, and lost his job working in a restaurant because of lockdown. So it's just one thing after the next, and you know, there's really no hope in sight. I mean, it's true that, you know, okay, so Democrats are going to basically probably get massacred in midterms. So then we have Republicans who are they actually going to do anything better for American workers? I think you'd have to be a fool to think so. So it's really, you know, I think actually the ruling class and Biden's advisors just they see his approval ratings the same way that they see the Azov battalion and Ukraine in general. It's cannon fodder for an agenda. Ukraine is cannon fodder for war, for the U.S. is kind of holy war against Russia. And Biden's term, his approval ratings are cannon fodder. His entire presidency is cannon fodder for war against the working class here in the U.S.
I don't think, yeah. Can we just shut down the internet? I think we can just shut down the internet after that one. It's pretty much what's going on right now. That's summed up pretty nicely. I don't need to do anything. All right, we're done. Everybody got that, right? Hit that on replay about 30 times, and we can call it good. Universe is set.
So, Dan, is all this frenetic international activity by the Biden administration, not just against Russia, but also against China, this constant emphasis on military intervention, sanctions against half the population of the earth are under American sanctions, whilst complete inattention to the needs of the mass of the American people. Is this all just displacement activity, or is one the causation of the other?
Jesus. I know you guys are forgetting. Are you putting this many ads on because you know how many freaking views he gets? Literally, are they putting, because he has, 30,000 views when I set this up. He's probably over 33,000 views now. Are they doing this because he's growing, so they're adding the hell out of it to try to annoy people? Like, what's their deal here? This is a very new channel. Like, he just had to start this. What's their angle given this? I mean, there's no way he's getting monetized for this, so.
So your question is sorry, I don't totally understand the question. Go ahead, George.
Well, what I'm saying is, I mean, is he hyperactive overseas because he simply can't solve the problems of America? Or are the problems of America in part a result of the hyperactivity overseas?
Right. So which came first? I think it's kind of a which came first, the chicken or the egg conundrum. I mean, I think what we have is an empire in decline. And so certainly by going to war in Ukraine, all of the provocations that the U.S. and NATO were carrying out in Ukraine, while the media was saying, oh, Russian troops are amassing on Ukraine's borders as if it wasn't inside Russia. All of this certainly serves as a very convenient distraction from everything happening here in the United States, from the economic devastation that people are suffering. But I think it only really resonates with a small amount of the population. I mean, you see that in his approval ratings, which are, as I said, about 30%. But also, look at who's flying Ukrainian flags around the United States. If you go, I live in a low income neighborhood, a poor neighborhood basically. No one's flying Ukrainian flags around here. If you go across the river into Capitol Hill, into the center of power in Washington D.C., there are Ukrainian flags everywhere, and these are people, who believe that this is what the United States should be doing, or perhaps they're benefiting from it. Maybe they're a weapons contractor. I think, I think this war serves as a very convenient distraction, but it's kind of hard to separate them because, war abroad also brings, it changes the economy at home. We've seen a very strong process of gentrification, for example, here in the United States over the last years, something that accelerates as more and more money goes into the war machine.
Extraordinary. Now, you rightly pointed out that the Republicans and the Democrats are Tweedledee and Tweedledum, or as I put it, less culturally polished, two cheeks of the same ass. But of course, they are the only two cheeks that people currently can vote for. In which case, it's quite likely, as you say, that the Democrats will take a drubbing at the midterms in November. Is Trump going to run again, in your view? And if he will he succeed?
Why do we always have to bring this up?
I hate to speculate and make predictions. I mean, I think Trump remains the face of the Republican Party, and he's certainly remaining active, even though he's been censored and banned on social media. He's created his own social media site and this kind of thing, and he's doing events that, frankly, are popular. There was one a few months ago in the middle of Alabama, in the middle of nowhere, and there were tens of thousands of people there. Joe Biden, there's no way he could, or Kamala Harris, or whoever, the Democrats are going to run in 2024. There's no way they could attract 40,000 people or 50,000 people to the middle of, to some forgotten place in the middle of nowhere. So Trump still commands a very strong following. There's so much that can happen between now and then. I think one of the
things we need to do is get through the next election, and then see how things shape up from there, and see what this war continues past the election, or if it's just a facade. See it it's fucking. Why are we talking about the fucking next presidency? Why do people keep talking about that? So much shit to go between now and then. We'll talk about that in a fucking year, all right? In a year, we have to start talking about it. Right now, let's just shut the fuck up. Got a whole year before we have to even think about it.
The Republicans to watch out for is Ron DeSantis, who throughout the pandemic has really made a name for himself. I think, he.
And I will be actively campaigning against him. Oh, yes, I will. Mr. Anti-free speech, anti-protest, anti-LGBTQ, and anti-everything. He's just anti, okay? So we cannot let this guy come to power. If you're worried about Trump, I'm worried about DeSantis.
Has a very strong chance of becoming the Republican candidate and actually even winning, particularly because Democrats, they have nobody. They can't field anybody. I mean, they had to go with Joe Biden and just basically his celebrity off of being the vice president during the Obama years. But, I mean, Kamala Harris, nobody likes her. She didn't win a single delegate in her home state of California. She can't debate at all. She's just incredibly unpopular. Whoever Republicans run, Democrats are going to have an incredibly difficult time defeating them again.
Yeah. But again, we're talking years away. So that's where we're at. We're years away. This looked pretty cool. Spies, indentured servants, or heroes, Cuban doctors respond to U.S. slanders. With breakthrough news with Rania Khalek. She's always fantastic. This clip looked really good. I have not seen it yet, so this is reaction, not review. I am going to pack another bowl. So while we take a look at this, we're going to be test running LA Kush Cake. LA Kush Cake. It's available at probably any mass-produced dispensary in any of the states you're legal in. That's how it kind of works now. It's corporate owned, and there's a handful of companies running everything. Oh, god damn, go figure. That's why we're pro whole grow. Everybody should be pro whole grow. Grow over that shit from home. It's a natural plant. We should not have to pay so much damn money for it. Alright, hold on a second, guys. Gonna set this next bit up while I pack my bowl. Gonna take the camera off for 2 seconds. Be right back. Alright. Alright. Got it all packed up. Got my bowl. Let's do the next bit with some LA Kush Cake. Supposedly 21.4, so let's see if it knocks me the fuck out. Always be nice to take a knockout punch on there. That'd be funny. Spies, indentured servants, or heroes? What are Cuban doctors really?
Hello everyone, I'm Rania Kalik and this is Dispatches in Havana, Cuba. And I'm joined by Dr. Juan Jesus Luis Aleman. He is the Deputy Director of the Moncada Clinic in Havana, where we are right now, and he's also a member of the Henry Reeve Brigade. Thank you so much for joining me. So I guess a good place to start is, can you tell our viewers what is the Henry Reeve Brigade?
La Brigada Henry Reeve es una brigada que se formó con médicos cubanos en el año 2005 con idea de nuestro comandante en jefe Fidel Castro, con el objetivo de socorrer a las víctimas de un ciclón inmenso que hubo, el Katrina, en Nueva Orleans, que había un desastre, más de miles de muertos y millones de pérdidas materiales, y entonces Fidel organizó esta brigada con ese objetivo, en primer lugar. Ellos negaron siempre la visa a los médicos cubanos y de hecho se convirtió entonces en una brigada que para atender epidemias y catástrofes a nivel regional y mundial.
So you're a member of the Henry Reeve Brigade. Where around the world have you served as a doctor?
Okay, I'm just realizing that you guys can't read the entirety of the subtitles, so I guess I will talk for him. That's unfortunate. You have to hear my voice more. Alright, so yeah. Just because you can't see the entirety of his subtitles, I will speak for him and we'll turn it down when he talks. Henry Force Brigade, it was 2005. Following the performance of his brigade, the United States didn't accept this, and we're going to help people in New Orleans. And we are entrusted with others' missions. That year, 2005, a group left for Guatemala because of the landslide that killed around 200 people. It completely covered several towns. And another group went to Pakistan. The earthquake in Pakistan had caused many deaths and especially many multiple people. Some were missing legs. A surgical team and prosthetic rehabilitation were included to help treat those people who were maimed from the earthquake. I was in Guantanamo during this period, and later in 2014, I was in West Africa, especially in Liberia, for caring for Ebola patients. We spent about 6 months in this place, and it was a successful mission due to the difficulty involved caring for a patient with Ebola at the time. We were there for 6 months. Later on in 2017, there were for a hurricane called Maria that would hit the Eastern Caribbean. It was particularly swept in the island of Dominican away. There were many victims, especially epidemics that occurred from digestive transmissions, patients with chronic diseases. They weren't being taken care of during that normal time frame. We were there for about 40 days in harsh conditions. Because we were sleeping on the floor, we had no water or electricity, but well, we had a great time because we felt very useful. Later on, to 2020, it was the pandemic of COVID-19, and we left for Italy. Late towards Lombardy, there's an epicenter there. We're in Lombardy, 50 meters of brigade. We were there for about 4 months. caring for patients with the VID in different situations, both in primary care as well as intensive care. Subsequently, the last year of the mission, I was on the same year. At the end of the pandemic, we went to Mexico, which was the country with the highest mortality rate in the world during that time. About 10% of the people with the VID died, and we were there working in ICU in the capital district and military hospitals. Jesus. We were there for around 4 to 5 months. And up until today, those have been the primary missions as part of Henry something Brigade. Okay, Jesus.
Why, in some cases, put your life at risk maybe to go all around the world to deliver medical care? What motivates you to be a part of this mission?
First of all, the need to be able to help others is the part of my life. Just like it motivates me to work here now. We are currently working with no schedule as part of our philosophy to help everyone we can. It's an idea one had since birth. In Cuba, people are formed with the idea of being able to be helpful. To be able to help. More than obtaining an economic benefit, which is needed, there's also the sense of feeling good about yourself. It's important. I think that's my main motivation. Damn it.
In another country, which makes sense. But of course, as you know, the U.S. has framed the medical brigades going abroad as some sort of form of human trafficking or slavery, that you as a doctor are being forced by the state to go serve abroad so that the state can make money off of your labor. The U.S. also, on the other hand, has accused this system of being a system of sending Cuban spies to go, inculcate or indoctrinate people into communism. I mean, these are all the accusations from U.S. officials. So how do you respond to those accusations about the medical missions from Cuba around the world?
¿Cómo tú vas a pagar a una persona que va a arriesgar su vida?
Talk to a person
Para
who's going to
salvar la
risk their
otra?
life to
Eso no hay
save
como
another.
pagarlo,
There's no
¿entiendes?
need to pay for
No hay
that, you
como
know.
pagarlo, ni hay como
There's no way to pay.
obligarte a hacer
There's
eso.
no way to do that. That's a tough one. It's impossible. And besides, no one's forcing you. It's voluntary. It's an honor to be able to serve others. It's already part of one's internal philosophy, but no, it's not like someone is forming them or forcing them or anything like that. We are all antithesis of being that. First of all, even though it may seem we are homogenous, we have very different opinions with the brigade, and nobody is a spy. None spies, and nobody here. And we do a lot of work regularly. There is no time to spy. I don't know about long-term missions, but in Henry Reeve Brigade, it's short-term and very intense work. Very intense. It's hard to become a spy in that moment, in my opinion. It's silly to think that. It's part of a construction narrative that they've recreated, put on the state's sponsors of terrorism, when in reality we have other things to do, take care of. There's no way that we're sponsoring anything because we do not have the means to do so.
What do you think, from your own perspective, is the purpose of the U.S. attacking the medical brigades and pressuring countries like Bolivia and Brazil to expel the Cuban doctors? Some have suggested this is actually an economic attack on Cuban doctors because they do make a little bit more money when they go serve abroad. And then it also does give some source of income to the Cuban government. So do you see it as an economic attack on Cuba, the way that the U.S. has pressured other governments to expel Cuban doctors?
Of course, the fundamental objective is to take away a source of income from the country. The Henry Reeve Brigade does not have a health contract. It does not have cooperative ties, but the permanent brigades, like in Bolivia, Brazil, they had contracts where they received money for them. Where Cuba, also most of all, they're sponsored by the Pan American Health Organization. They were elaborated, and the fundamental objection was to take away a source of income from the country. It was not a crucial economic source, but it was important for the economic development of Cuba. That is the fundamental attack. Can you imagine that the people in Brazil cried when Cuban doctors left the country? To a spy or an agent that comes to harm people, you would not cry when saying goodbye to them or complain about them. In Bolivia, it was the same. So it seems like this fundamental reason for activity to deprive Cuba of some source of economic income, that was the goal of Brazil and Bolivia.
international medical missions, giving vaccines to poorer countries, and Cuba's foreign policy as a method of like internationalism and anti-imperialism. Do you see these things as being connected?
Es parte de la forma de pensar de
It is not
nosotros.
part of the way of our thinking.
Si nosotros profesamos que
If we
debemos
profess that we should have a country that helps others, we can't be indifferent. We can't act any indifferent. That's part of the way we think and the way we act. In cooperation with other countries, this is part of the way we are as a country.
Es lo más que puedo contestar al respecto. No tengo otra cosa que pensar. Eso es parte de la forma de conducirse en nuestro país en la política exterior. Siempre ha sido ayudar y cooperar.
And why did you become a doctor? Because in the U.S., so many people become doctors.
He's obviously a helping person. But good person to interview. Thank you, Rania. She does great work. Please follow her. Breakthrough News, Rania Kalik. Follow her anywhere you can. Let's check out Russell Brand. Actually, let's take a comedy break, huh? Let's take a comedy break.
Hi, my name is Alina, and I would like to give you a few reasons why you should consider dating a young Slavic.
Thank you very much. Today, we're going to talk about the crisis in Spain. Yeah, we're going to talk about the crisis in Africa. Yeah, Russia. President of Russia. Yeah, Putin. Yeah, Putin. Putin, listen to me. I have a very important message to you. The message is... Oh, I didn't finish Russia? Thank you to correct me, First Lady. Yeah, thank you very much. God bless you. And God bless...
Thank you all. Hallelujah. Clap to your president. Clap to your president right now.
Now let's do this. I'm holding my bladder. Let's get at her.
How are your meetings going in Cornwall, Mr. President? How are your meetings going here in Cornwall?
Very well. Come on.
They always do.
Some people assert that he wanders off course on his way to the White House. Once? Oh, I bet he wanders off all the time. Oh, poor puppy. He doesn't know where to go.
Aspirations.
Watch him wander off and on screen.
Okay, get ready for this one. Will you stand with Joe Biden and Kamala? And for families across the country, the school year, gosh, it always brings this sort of mix of emotions for all of us. All at once, we feel the anticipation of new classmates and teachers. The relief of not having to hear, I'm bored again. And Mayor Bowser and Chancellor Fairby, thank you for joining us as well. And for families across...
Did he just follow a fucking ice cream truck?
Thank you for joining us as well. And for families across the country.
That is funny. I ain't never seen that before. That is funny.
Like stories about terrorists getting shot in the face. I'm talking.
Okay. That is pretty funny. Let's do some Russell Brand.
With Hillary Clinton's campaign being fined for misuse of funds and the ongoing Biden farrago not being properly reported by the legacy media, we ask you, are the mainstream media in alliance with certain political interests? Hello there, you 5.4 or 5 million awakening wonders. The woodshed is there. You can get your own log if you want. I'll send you one if you really fancy one. And look at the plant flourishing back to its full mighty health. And look at my T-shirt. Any funds we do raise going to good causes. What a fantastic channel we're creating, and it's all because of you. It's all because we see you as awake and able to make your own assessments, your own decisions, form your own opinions, take on opposing views, and formulate truth in that crucible of apparently contradictory facts. And here we've got some great stories for you. Come see me live, by the way. There's a link in the description. Sign up to my mailing list. I put a link up at the end. Subscribe if you don't subscribe already. But most importantly, pay attention attention now because we're going to tell you about a fascinating story where a young student at this conference where poor old Brian Stelter got his ass handed to him, and now Applebaum from The Atlantic has been confronted by another one of these naughty students about the reporting at The Atlantic.
Thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it. I'm Daniel Schmidt. I'm a freshman at the University of Chicago. My question is for Ms. Applebaum. So in 2020, you wrote, "Those who live outside the Fox News bubble do not, of course, need to learn any of the stuff about Hunter Biden," referring to his laptop, of course.
Oh, we're all so bored of Hunter Biden's laptop. Oh, boring old laptops. Oh, boring.
A poll later after that found that if voters knew about the content of the laptop, 16% of Joe Biden voters would have acted differently. Now, of course, we know a few weeks ago the New York Times confirmed that the content is real. Do you think the media acted inappropriately when they instantly dismissed Hunter Biden's laptop as Russian disinformation? And what can we learn from that in ensuring that what we label as disinformation is truly disinformation and not reality?
So what a great question from this young person.
That is fantastic. That is a well-articulated, well-thought-out, and factually accurate question presented. That's fantastic. That's exactly what you're supposed to do in those situations. You're supposed to come correct and ask the right shit. He did it well. I don't care if he's right wing, left wing, I don't care who he is, he did it properly. Okay?
He's confronting the journalist with how the narrative unfolded. Initially, it was assumed that the Hunter Biden laptop was irrelevant, although I know a lot of you believed it from the get-go, probably because of your own biases. Be honest, we've got to investigate ourselves while we're investigating others. Hit me up in the comments below. And now it's been proven to be true, and the New York Times has sanctified it, and it would have made an impact on that election. So that's interesting, isn't it?
My problem with Hunter Biden's laptop is I think it's totally irrelevant.
Oh, there's some more irrelevant news. What's the irrelevant news today? The irrelevant news is that potentially Hunter Biden and Joe Biden have economic relationships in Ukraine and China with
oil tycoons, and this whole fucking war is about oil, and I don't know. I mean, I don't want just Biden's shit to come out. I want Trump's I want all the dirt to come out. I want some case that takes down all the dirty, corrupt politicians, wipes out 90% of the fucking DC, takes out all the lobbyists with them, and fucking disallows them to be in any government ever again, so we can actually have a uncorrupt government. That's what I want. That would be the fucking case of all cases. It would take a lot, because even child sex rings doesn't seem to do anything, but God, that would be good. Just take them all down. Get some evidence that's so overwhelming that, like, leaks to every news publication and runs into everybody's emails, and we can't ignore it, and we have to I want the corruption gone, and it's all of them. It's so many of them. It's 99.99%, right? Like,
how boring. What, a potential president and his son, just involved in energy companies in Ukraine.
Guts, right? Yeah, that was ballsy to go up there and do that. Like, that was so freaking awesome. I have so much freaking, that was so great. Balls to go up there and ask that. And yeah, he had it put together properly when he came correct. It was awesome.
Have you heard of Ukraine and China? What are those guys doing? They don't have any power or influence over there in China, do they?
I mean, it's not whether it's disinformation or, I mean, I don't think the Hunter Biden's business relationships have anything to do with who should be president of the United States. So.
Seriously? Nepotism ties don't have any connections to you? Like, oh, I mean, when the kid of the president or the vice president makes tons and tons of money out of complete fucking nowhere, has no fucking experience in the field, you don't think that's fucking relevant? Are you fucking serious? Who is this person?
I don't find it to be interesting.
I would say it is interesting. Not the salacious stuff. As we've always said when we talked about this, someone has issues with addiction or has a private life that strays from territories that might be regarded as normal, I don't think that's anybody else's business. But when it comes to financial corruption, I think it's important. And I'll tell you who else thought it was important. The mainstream media. Because they didn't report on it on the eve of an election because they were invested in a particular outcome, it might seem. Take another story. We all remember the immersive experience of, like, Trump-Russia collaboration. Oh, there's Russian spying, there's Russian support. Let me just read you a little bit of this. The Federal Election Commission earlier this month fined Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign and the Democratic National Committee for failing to properly report funding on opposition research into the 2017 Steele dossier, which examined former President Donald Trump's alleged links to Russia. Now, I think that story has been largely disparaged. Comparable, but sort of reversed, to the stuff that's gone on with Hunter Biden's laptop. It makes you realise how media works. If you're deluged and hit with enough information enough times, you ultimately kind of believe it, and it's too late now, and it's confusing. Notice how many stories you can apply that to. Potentially around the pandemic, certainly around the Hunter Biden laptop, potentially around the whole Russiagate stuff. All of these things are making me realise you have to take on media information with a great deal of discernment. In a letter sent by the FEC to both parties on Tuesday, the agency said the Clinton campaign and the DNC improperly reported the money they spent funding the dossier. They weren't meant to be spending that money funding a dossier, labelling the spending as legal services and legal and compliance consulting instead of opposition research. Now that's important. That relates to trust. What they were actually trying to do was generate a smear campaign, which as of today is unsubstantiated. So it shows you that you need to apply a good deal of discernment. And frankly, it's down to Chicago University and its students to unravel this whole damn conspiracy.
Yeah, that's, I guess. I mean, good for the students though. I'm glad, you know, the people are waking up, and if we can get I have somebody who definitely thinks that young people are not voting and young people aren't, out there and doing shit, but I think young people are getting ready. The anti-gay push in Florida, which is going to spread into other Republican states, which is going to spread to other purple states, or what do you want to call them? The swing states. That shit will spread, and the Florida high schools they're protesting. Orlando, Tampa, Miami, high schoolers have been walking out protesting this shit. They're active. They're involved. So I don't think that's completely accurate. And the high schoolers I interact with are they're not necessarily involved, but they're also not heads in the sand like I got too much going on to pay attention. They're involved, at least to the point where they know what's going on better than 70% of my I guess like the older, when you work in a restaurant and a bar, you got a lot of 20 somethings, and then you got a lot of 50 somethings, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of people in between. Those 50 somethings, they just fucking watch Fox News or CNN, and that's the only diversity they have. It's like I watch Fox or I watch CNN. At least the young people have some diversity and they talk a little bit. Old people are too set in their ways, and I'm right in the middle.
Political candidates and groups are legally required to publicly disclose their spending to the FEC, which is responsible for enforcing campaign finance law in the US, and explain the purpose of any cost that exceeds $200. The FEC fined the Clinton campaign $8,000 and the DNC $105,000 for the misconduct, the letter said. Clinton's campaign is still technically in operation. We could still win it! We could still win it! With more than $181,000 of cash on hand, according to the January 22nd filing.
She still has $181,000 on cash on hand, which means that they're running out of money, but she's been paying consultants this whole fucking time that she's not been running. She's had millions of dollars paying consultants, probably $500,000 a year. And I bet when her first campaign finance came out, it was something like, I don't know, 6 people, $500 million she paid. So she has a handful of friends that have been getting paid this whole fucking time.
More than enough to pay the FEC fine. The infamous dossier in question was prepared by former UK intelligence officer Christopher Steele and included a trove of prurient but unverified claims regarding the alleged relationship between Trump and members of the Russian intelligence community, as well as assertions that his campaign colluded with the Kremlin in the 2016 election. Much of the information within the document has since been refuted. It's difficult not to conclude that the Clinton campaign were involved in malfeasance and nefarious activity because they didn't even admit that they were spending the money on what they said they were. They lied. It says here that the Clinton campaign and the DNC paid more than $1 million to the law firm Perkins Coie, which hired Fusion GPS to conduct opposition research. Why don't
they paid $1 million to a company that hired somebody else to do it? Oh, I love the fucking abstraction of wealth that happens in this shit. Like the amount of money they have to spread around because all this money is like given to them through like the Clinton Foundation or campaigning and in order to dedicate time and energy. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm right in that middle area, so I get it. And I look around at the people my age who have kids and shit, or, kids ranging from, people my age have kids ranging from fucking, like, 20 all the way down to newborns. And I get it. Like, it's hard to talk to people my own age because they don't live my life. I'm a bartender, and I'm not married, and I'm not gonna have kids. yeah, I have a dog. I have a significant other who's not sleeping on the couch anymore, but I do not have. I mean, we have apartment, we have a life, but we don't have like that kind of responsibility. So I have, I have no concept of that type, like that type of time, and yeah, it gets to be too much. It gets to be too much. You can't pay attention. But the problem is that we don't have any 30-minute news organizations that can get to those people that only watch 30 minutes of news a night, that only have time for that, that are actually trustworthy. So these people over the past 25, 30 years have had slowly warped news stations giving them slowly warped news, so they all have been moving to the corporate go for it. So yeah, and it was the same. It was the same. Like I read a book about how it was the same in the '60s. Like the '60s, it was the college students or like the 55 to 70 year old, very well off people who had time to do that and were like more, affluent. It's the same as it is today. Like when you go to protests, it's 25 and under, 30 and under, or it's 55 to 70 people who have enough money that they have time to do that shit. And those are the two categories of people who generally protest. It's acceptable. That's what happened in the 60s. It's just you need to get up to that 3% threshold. If you can get 3% of the population out protesting, you can shut this fucking thing down and actually get some change. 3%. It's so fucking big of a number, but it sounds like a small number. It's actually fucking huge. But if actual change were to happen, 3%, you shut the whole thing down. And it can happen again. I think with the stress of the times, it could happen.
Oh yeah, we spent $1 million on trying to find out whether Trump is colluding with the Russians. Why is that not there? It's further evidence to suggest that the whole thing was a confection. I'm not saying that it was. I'm saying that all this evidence could suggest that. Could it? Hit me up in the comments below if you think that, given that it's simply an inquiry and a question. Much like the students of Chicago University are asking of another respected journalist about why the Biden laptop was embargoed. You couldn't report on it. You couldn't. Why? Oh, because it might make people vote differently. And a subsequent poll, as the lad said,
23.7% hybrid. I definitely enjoy it. It's a good one. LA Kush Cake. Whew.
people would have voted differently. Well, that means that the outcome of an entire general election was at stake and information was suppressed that later proved to be true. I mean, what does that tell you? What does that imply about American democracy and who the media supports and what the media wants? And whichever team you're on, you have to acknowledge that that does not look good. But here's some more news reporting on Hunter and James Biden's business dealings. Oh, it's so boring though. I'm falling asleep talking about it.
And we want to turn now to a CBS News investigation by Catherine Herridge, who spoke with a top Republican senator who for years has been investigating the business dealings of the president's brother and son.
Now, it's a Republican senator, and if you don't know this already, I'm no fan of the Republican Party. So I'm not like, oh, goody, the Democrats are going to look bad. I don't like either of them or any of them. I don't think they're all bad human beings. They're all children of the light and children of God, if you ask me. But these systems are so entrenchantly corrupt that I'm not going to waste any more of my life going, I like that bit of the system. Oh, that bit of the system's horrible. Oh, that bit's boring. The whole thing stinks.
CBS News.
Exactly. Very well put. Thank you, Russell. Very well put.
News has learned that more than 150 transactions involving either Hunter or James Biden's global business affairs were flagged as concerning by U.S. banks for further review. Some of those concerns included large wire transfers.
Boring, concerning business affairs. Oh, I fell asleep.
James Biden has worked as an entrepreneur and recently in the healthcare industry.
Healthcare industry? Well, it's been a quiet time for the old healthcare industry last couple of years. What are you concerned about?
This week, Grassley released bank records indicating James Biden's company, the Lion Hall Group, was paid directly by a Chinese-financed consulting firm.
These are bank records. I've got a conspiracy theory. Maybe when that Chinese energy firm gave some money, gave some money to James Biden, maybe they wanted something in return. You maniac.
In our interview, Grassley did not allege the Bidens broke the law, but he said it's concerning that both Hunter and James Biden were promised retainers for their China work totaling $165,000 a month in 2017.
That is a good retainer, man. I'd like that. Check. I'll go and work for the Chinese company. Right, hello, welcome to the channel. Everything's going pretty well in the world. Shut up, watch the mainstream media, vote for either the Democrats or Republicans. You probably get someone good either way. Where's my fucking money?
This 20...
Titleist T-Series.
I understand a commercial on this. He's getting big. 3 commercials on freaking George Galloway seems like they're trying to turn people off of him and annoy people. We've gone a lot further with a very big channel of him than That's interesting. Hold on. Yeah, we're almost all the way through.
2019
That was the
subpoena,
first commercial.
verified by CBS News, shows federal investigators also sought Hunter and James Biden's business records from a major U.S. bank dating back to 2014.
Why weren't you telling us then? Why weren't you reporting it then? Got some boring news.
The George Galloway video was a little bit shorter and had 3 commercial breaks. Much smaller commercial. I mean, he's talking 171,000 George Galloway has. He has 4.5 million. And he's got 1 commercial on his video. I think YouTube's trying to stunt George Galloway's growth. He's unstunnable. He's famous in other ways, movie famous, comedian famous, but I think they're trying to stunt George Galloway.
His Vice President's son and brother are all involved with these Chinese energy firms. China? I've heard of them somewhere.
As part of a separate probe by the U.S. Attorney in Delaware into possible violations of tax and foreign lobbying laws.
Oh, violations of tax and lobbying laws are so boring. I'm so bored of all this corruption. Yeah, I'm bored of the corruption as well. That's why I'd like it to end. That's why I'd like systems that are representative of ordinary people and our will running our own communities, being able to have some impact through, here's the word, democracy. Democracy. Have you heard of it?
I think Hunter and James Biden should not have entered into those relationships. In the best case, those things look really bad. In the worst case, the conflicts can be quite serious.
The best case scenario is that it looks bad. The worst case scenario is that it's really serious. All the way between those two poles, I believe, is a little thing called the news. It should all be covered.
The White House Chief of Staff said this week that the president is confident his family did the right thing, adding these actions by Hunter and James are private matters and don't involve the president.
Imagine, like, your own family. I mean, if someone's, like, got a good job at a restaurant, you're like, oh, we'll go to that restaurant, we'll get a good seat. And then the president of the United States, and you're getting a retainer of 65 grand or 100 grand a month. Now that we've done this deal, guess who my dad is? Go on, who is it? It's actually the president. Bloody hell, can you get us a selfie with him? It's part of it.
I don't find it to be interesting. I mean, that would be my problem with that as a major news story.
We're going to talk about more of this tomorrow in our first
interesting.
panel, so stand by. And I think we have run out of time.
So there you have it. A freshman at a university is asking more pertinent, germane, and important questions than the entire corporate and legacy media. And when he does so, we don't have time for that. There's a panel on little bastards tomorrow. This meeting's over. That's how the establishment operates. You can see the whole thing in microcosm. The young, inquiring mind asks questions, and the establishment shuts it down and tries to flatten it out with faff, bullshit, and pap. I would say that these relationships within the Biden family and their corporate connotations, or these relationships within the Clinton campaign and their potential propagandist connotations, are significant matters. And if you don't have a...
Yes, they're significant. So are the Trump ones. So are freaking all of them. All of them, all of them, all of them. Including the Pelosi ones, including the McConnell ones, including, all those people who are 10 to 100 millionaires who are really... They have like 5 family members who are also like 50 millionaire, 100 millionaires. Like, these people need to be fucking called out. They need to be called out hard. And it's both sides, and it's not just America. It's Trudeau, it's freaking Macron. It's all the Western society world. We're all intertwined with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and they're all getting paid by these assholes. These 20 families that are billionaires. They're all getting paid by the same people. All the leaders from all these countries are all tied with the same people, and it's such a fucking uphill battle. Such an uphill battle. All right. I want to check this out. I have not watched much by this group, so I cannot say this is very reactory. I've just picked this up from Rockfin recommendations, and this looked pretty interesting. CNN Plus's epic failure, which sounded funny to me. I enjoy it. Luke takes a few minutes to gloat about the epic failure that has been CNN Plus. Which, yeah, like I said, it sounds fun. I do not know much about the Real Progress in Action. The Luke Parcher show. Again, it's just something that Rockfin has been screaming at me about, and so I thought I'd give it a shot. And if it's garbage, I apologize. If you know it's garbage, throw it in the comments, please, so I don't waste my time. Maybe I slept to this one. Does that sound familiar?
This is just a really funny story, you guys. I cannot help myself but cover this, quite frankly. CNN Plus launched, and it was disastrous, like absolutely disastrous, as we've all been on the left predicting for months and months and months, right? CNN Plus, for those that don't know, is CNN's attempt to go into the streaming game and the podcast game. Immediately following their launch, they had to drop their prices substantially to try to bring in more subscribers. They spent some $250 million marketing this new CNN Plus platform. And what they've got so far is 18,000 subscribers. You guys, what do I even say to that? I'm not trying to get up on my high horse. I'll get a few hundred views on my live streams. It's not like I'm getting some massive viewership, but I'm also algorithmically oppressed in a way that CNN is not. And I also, for those at home, this might be shocking to you, but I don't have a $250 million advertising budget. We at RP do not spend that kind of money marketing our content, only to come up with 18,000 subscribers. So I just find this, entirely hilarious. The only reason that independent content creators have any sort of an ability to bring in an audience at all is because of precisely how awful the mainstream media is, and CNN doesn't seem to understand that at all. This is in TechCrunch. CNN Plus's launch may be off to a bumpy start, numbers suggest. CNN Plus launched on Tuesday, March 29th, and is already showing mediocre results in terms of standalone mobile app installs. Sensor Tower released its initial figures, first reported by Insider, that showed the CNN app, which now houses the new streaming service, added about 18,000 installs on the day of the launch. During the 7 days ending March 22nd, it had an average of 9,000 installs per day. CNN's new service includes a mix of daily news panels and documentaries such as The Land of the Giants, Titans of Tech, The Murdochs, Empire of Influence, as well as CNN anchors Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, Don Lemon, and Jake Tapper, and more. I mean, I just can't even help but laugh at that being written as though it's some sort of promotion. Wolf Blitzer? Who the fuck at home is like, where's Wolf Blitzer's content? I don't get enough of him. Oh my goodness gracious.
Don Lemon,
the subscription only costs $5.99 per month. They dropped
everybody.
it. Plus, CNN is offering a limited time deal and is giving new subscribers 50% off the standard monthly plan for a lifetime, which is just $2.99 per month. When you have to drop your price, cut your price in half right off the bat, it's not a good sign. Not great. Not great stuff, especially when you spend $250 million advertising the product. The company has gone all in on the service, throwing a pricey launch event at South by Southwest and running an ad during the Oscars broadcast where spots cost as much as $2.2 million. Ahead of the launch, CNN Plus spent approximately $322,000 in 2021, per Cantor's estimates, noted by Insider. One person familiar with the numbers informed her that overall, Warner Media spent around $100 million to market CNN Plus, which is more than what the network typically spends in a year on marketing. A CNN executive said the launch budget was around $250 million. There's the number I keep citing.
Jesus.
By comparison, Disney spent some $135 million in TV advertising for Disney Plus in the first half of 2020, according to eMarketer. So listen, it's always fun to be able to laugh at.
These again are ridiculous numbers amounts of spending on advertising. Just millionaires giving other millionaires money so they can show their pictures of the same products that we've known about forever. And oh my god, advertising is such a joke.
It's CNN, right? And their lack of understanding of why they can't seem to retain their audience, or bring in any new viewership in target demographics at all. They basically thrive on people like 55 and up, and that is it. And it's no sign of success to have a bunch of people basically leave your network on their television while they go about their day, paying almost no attention to it, which seems to be a large portion of their reported viewership on.
They get airports and hotel lobbies and some bars. Some bars will have CNN on the background.
On their regular network. But guys, 18,000 on your first day when you've spent $250 million on a product. I mean, can you imagine the humiliation? Just imagine. Pick your favorite leftist commentator, right? Someone on the left who's independent, doesn't get a whole ton of views. Maybe they're popular, but they don't get a whole ton of views. Imagine if they had $250 million to market their product. Where would they be right now, right? This totally disproves the notion of meritocracy, right?
With $250 million, we could have a left channel like built and advertised for that would have way more than 18,000 subscribers. Like with $250 million, we could build, like we could take over a building, furbish that building, take sign all these content creators that are worthwhile on, and advertise it, and have a channel built around 250 million, and they wasted it on promoting CNN online. Like we could build an online left channel with that kind of money, and they wasted it and didn't even fucking get a success. Like, come on, it's ridiculous. If I win $250 million tomorrow, I'm gonna fucking create a leftist channel and show these assholes what it's done. And it probably won't make that much money, but I won't care because I'll still have a few 100,000 left.
Like CNN and cable news totally disprove that notion. They get their high viewers. I mean, they're tanking proportionally, right, compared to what they should be putting up. But they get a lot more viewers than a lot of independent sources do. But they suck so bad that whenever they have to come into a market where they actually have to compete, where they don't have a monopoly over it, they end up slammed, even though they've spent all this money on marketing. 18,000 subscribers, you guys. And by the way, that's only the people that added the app. A lot of those people, that's actually an overestimate because that's not subscriber totals. A lot of those people may have just downloaded the app, noticed that the subscription was going to cost them a monthly fee, and said, fuck that. So who knows how many of those 18 actually even subscribed to the content. That's just who downloaded the app. What an embarrassment. What an absolute embarrassment. We in independent media thank CNN for their incompetence and for sending their viewers our way. And I'll continue to cover that story just because I get a kick out of it and I get a little bit of schadenfreude out of seeing CNN and their demise.
Yeah, that is funny. Man, what a real freaking jerk. Like seriously, like 250 million? You could have created a freaking network from the ground. And they couldn't even promote a network that's been a thing for decades. Oh, that is funny. All right, I wanted to check out Lee for a while. Lee Camp, I mean, you guys know who this is, right? Seriously. Lee Camp was deleted. His show taken off of the air and also taken off of YouTube worldwide. And his channel was taken off of Spotify. And so yeah, so he's been pretty heavily censored. So I'm gonna throw him. They lie about the weather. Yeah, that's fucking funny. I had somebody tell me that they lie about they went off on this, like they were yelling at me kind of because they're like, they lie about the weather. I've heard it both here in Florida and up in Michigan, and they say that they're lying about the weather to try to get people to vacation. It's like, oh, they underreport the rain so that they can get people to come out here and spend money. Let's come down to Florida. It's not gonna be rainy. It's gonna be 80 and fine. And then you get down here and it's 3 days of 65 and rain, and you're like, well, fuck, I'm stuck in a hotel now, and Florida rain, if it's 65, it's blowing 40-mile-an-hour winds. You can't really do a whole lot. You can get places, but then power's going to flick out, so you can't go to the theater. There's certain, it kind of, it takes the whole. And in Michigan, they say the same thing. Like, oh, it's going to be 80 and sunny, and we get up here at 65 and cold, like chilly, and what we wouldn't have left Chicago, we wouldn't have left Detroit. And it's like, I don't know if the weatherman's promoting tourism, or they're just really bad at it, but. I've heard that theory before, and I've considered it because it seems like they're pretty half-assed at their job. Also, they're really hard at predicting the water, and I live next to water, so that's always a big thing. When you live next to water, it's really hard to predict how it's going to hit that water and be affected. But always checking out Lee Camp.
U.S. training and running this war in Ukraine as a proxy war against Russia. This video, this is pretty mind-blowing. This is a French journalist, and it's in French with subtitles. But I have sent it to a friend of mine who speaks French, and
really?
she verified that it is a correct translation.
That's a new one. That's interesting. I never noticed that. I lived in Phoenix for a while, and I felt like they're pretty accurate. It did seem like it'd be. They kind of do that here in Florida right now. Like, it'll say, like, oh, it'll be 80 tomorrow, and it really ends up being about 84, 85. And 80 definitely sounds more comfortable than 85, because, yeah, 85 in Florida is hot and muggy, and 80 sounds like, ooh, 80, you can move around and be nice. And I don't know. And then at the beach, they always report it a little warmer during tourist season. They might try to fuck, like, I mean, they get it all handed to them, right? Like, nobody actually dissects information anymore. It's all handed to them from their corporate company, and then they read it off regionally. So yeah. I mean, it could be corporate. It could be definitely corporate because corporate overlords predicted all. So they were like, hey, we want people doing this. We want people doing that. I don't know. That's a hard one. It'd be an interesting documentary to do, proving how weather's corrupt to help such and such, get people out of the cities and into tourist areas. I don't know.
Because I always worry that when you see a video where you see subtitles and it's like, let's say a Ukrainian soldier saying something and underneath it says, we're crazy and we like to eat babies, or a Russian soldier and the subtitles say like, oh my goodness, I love shooting kittens or whatever. Kittens. I always wonder, like, how do we know the subtitles are accurate? Like, it's one thing if you see a video where you see the person saying the words, but who subtitled this? So I did send this to someone who actually speaks the French and verified that these subtitles are correct. So let's watch this video of a French journalist speaking about the war in Ukraine.
Et j'ai accompagné des volontaires français. Il y a un certain nombre. Il y a eu un appel au début du président Zelensky qui a demandé aux volontaires internationaux qui souhaitaient qu'il y ait des expériences de combat. Et donc j'ai accompagné 3 Français, dont un qui a déjà été militaire avant, et 2 qui avaient combattu ensemble au Rojava contre les Kurdes, enfin avec les Kurdes contre Daesh. Donc des gens qui avaient des expériences militaires. J'ai passé plusieurs jours avec eux, et j'ai eu la surprise, et eux aussi, de découvrir que pour pouvoir aller dans l'armée ukrainienne, eh bien, ces Américains qui sont à la main. C'est-à-dire que nous, on a failli se faire arrêter. On a été confronté à un Américain qui
came in to tell us, here I am in charge, not the Ukrainians but me. I'm talking in the training and enrollment and international volunteers in the Ukrainian army. The guy even gave his name. He is a veteran of the Iraq War. I did my verification as I found to be Figaro magazine. Jesus Christ, he's talking fast. Holy fuck. Good God. I can't. He took us for the volunteers at the beginning, and I was extremely, like, what language is he so fast? Surprised by the violence of the words of the American. When he saw that we were journalists, he told us to leave, and then he was a little more, but still it was, I'm in charge, take the chips out of your cell phones, especially the international ones, we will give you the other chips, etc. And then sign the contract to the end of the war. And who is in charge? It's the Americans. I saw it with my own eyes. It's not the U.S. Army officially, of course, but nevertheless, there's the American footprint. It's quite significant, and we know that yesterday they sent 100 new weapons, which are called switchblades. They are some sort of drones, and they're fully motored, and then they get completely remote controlled. So new weapons. Officially, they have done it, and they're going to do it, and they have been there. That's the truth. I had the impression, beyond the romantic aspect of this war, I thought I was with the international brigades. I found myself facing the Pentagon.
So that is pretty incredible. This is a French journalist going to Ukraine as a journalist and finding that Americans are in charge of accepting people into the country.
Yeah, that's messed up. That is freaking hot. Like, whew. If we're being, like, I'm in charge, I'm an Iraqi veteran, I got this shit, that is pretty direct. That's pretty fucking directly involved.
Accepting and controlling journalists. And he said it was not officially American military, but that the person claiming to be in charge was clearly former American military because he was a veteran of Iraq. And, you know, this is not like the French, right? French media is not told to give that standpoint, right? That's the turd in the punch bowl because the French are aligning with the U.S. in this whole thing. Now, they've clearly been forced into that. The French and the Germans wanted to try and keep some sort of cooperation with Russia, but have not been allowed to, thanks to U.S. pressure. We're going to get more into that in a second. But that video is pretty amazing because he says quite clearly, I was kind of shocked to see that it is the Americans in charge of it. And then he talks about how the U.S. had just sent Switchblade drones to Ukraine, but that is a tiny amount of what the U.S. is sending to Ukraine. Hundreds of millions of dollars Biden and Congress have allotted to sending weaponry and other kinds of aid to Ukraine to keep this war going and make sure it keeps going, because the U.S. does not want this to end. They do not want any sort of peace agreement. They want to, what's the expression people have been passing around? They want to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. And that's what this is. It is, let's fight Russia.
Ooh, I had not heard that. That's a brutal one. That's rough. I've heard cannon fodder a lot. We're just using Ukrainians as cannon fodder. We're going to use all of Eastern Europe as cannon fodder if possible. And yeah, I've never heard that one though.
Endlessly until we've killed every Ukrainian. I mean, it truly is repulsive. I mean, honestly, it's tough to even sum up the horror of what's going on over there.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, Viceroy. I saw that freaking the other day where it was like literally. I woke up. I saw a news clip about their president there from Ukraine. I don't want to talk about him anymore, but I saw that he had a thank you, and then I was like, what? And then I clicked. The White House had their thing going over how the money was going divvied or whatever, and then I saw a thing about Biden bragging about it, and I was like, we're bragging about dumping $1 billion in Ukraine again? Like, week after week we're dumping $1 billion in Ukraine, but we still have so many fucking problems. Like, come on. Oh. We fight the Chinese until the last Taiwanese. Yeah. We have proxy wars in Somalia and Syria currently going. Iraq is still a live shooting war. What was it? Ethiopia and Niger still have skirmishing going on. Like, we are at proxy war as much as we can, and most of those are proxy wars with like the Chinese or the Russians, or it's not actually trying to. It's trying to control their natural resources and their banks. Like, we want to control their banks and their resources, and it's seems like we should be more civilized than that, right? Like, civilization should have gone past that by now.
And as I've said, you don't have to believe the reports, many of which are later debunked, or maybe all of which are later debunked, that Russia is aiming at civilians, to know that war kills a lot of innocent civilians, and people don't just die from.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know exactly what's going on with the Ethiopian war at the moment. I saw it on Breakthrough News or whatever. They do like a monthly report on Africa, and he was talking about how there were still active American soldiers in Ethiopia currently, and there were still like drone bombing campaigns happening in Ethiopia and Somalia and Libya, all currently happening. Niger has boots on the ground. Like, all these things are happening, and yeah, when they pop up, those things get popped up, they disappear. We don't want to talk about those wars for long periods of time because we're involved with them for very long periods of time. These aren't couple-month wars; these are decade skirmishes that we have, and we don't want to talk about them because, yeah, the American people don't want to hear about that. But I think this is going to be over by election. That was my theory. Always, it was going to be over in November, but. I mean, this is a theory. I am just a news junkie who's getting stoned and talking shit with you guys. Don't take me on that.
The bombs, innocent civilians don't just die from bombs. They die from not being able to get medical care, from not being able to get food or clean water. They die for a lot of reasons. War destroys societies and destroys lives, and the U.S. wants to keep this one going as long as possible. And they want people waving a big Ukrainian flag to keep this war going and make sure there is no process. It truly is mind-blowing.
He says they want to keep it going as long as possible. That's fucking scary. That scares me tremendously. I'm going to eat the rest of my edible here. My cookie. Homemade cookies. The recipe for my vegan, keto-friendly, gluten-free, delicious cookies. are on my YouTube page. I also have other vegan recipes if you ever want to check it out. Same name, Stony Progressive.
So, on that front, with that understanding, let's get to this is a damn good analysis written by Michael Hudson and reprinted at Popular Resistance. 1 second here. Oh, by the way, if you want to see more videos like this, please become a member at patreon.com/.
Yeah, when the I think that was at the end of Biden's administration. They asked the head of the American, I don't know, I can't remember who they asked, but they asked somebody, how many shooting skirmishes are we in? So like somebody that had on the top of the military, somebody way up there. They asked him how many active battles are we currently in, and he just laughed. He's like, I couldn't tell you. Like, I don't know. I couldn't even tell you. Like, you're the head of it. You should know. Like, I couldn't even tell you. Because he doesn't know. He probably was trying to think, how many are we actually in, and then how many am I allowed to say? And he didn't want to get into it because he doesn't know how many he's allowed to say, which is what's fucking scary.
Lee Camp, the lowest tier is $1.25 a week, and you get all the exclusive content. If you sign up at $10 a month, you get a free PDF of my book, Bullet Points Punchlines. So I hope you'll do that. Become a member at patreon.com/Lee Camp. All right, so here is the Popular Resistance reposted article.
So it's councilofforeignrelations.org. This is supposedly a pretty good map of all the countries that are having conflicts. So yeah, CFR.org. Council of Foreign Relations. And they have the Global Conflict Tracker, which is kind of interesting. Critical and significant skirmishes of the moment. It is an interesting site to click on everything and actually check out all of the actual conflict statuses and what they have to say. It is not a neutral site. It's from the Carnegie Foundation when I looked it up. So I'm not trusting the Carnegie Foundation as my prime source of news by any means. But it's an interesting site at least. So. Aw, shit, Rockfin.
Folks, what's up? I got a hell of a show for you. Hell of a moment of clarity for you today. Sorry, still setting some things up. Thanks for joining me. Please take a second to share this, let people know. Khan and Xi, China's Xi, shaking hands. And now, just the other day, was it yesterday, the day before, Imran Khan was taken out with a vote of no confidence as head of Pakistan. And here is the other article. U.S.-backed coup in Pakistan overthrows Prime Minister Imran Khan over his independent foreign policy. And you can definitely check out those articles if they're both on the front page of multipolarista.com. That's multipolarista.com. We also have it all at radindiemedia.com. So if you want articles like this, go to radindiemedia.com. All right, let's get back to the conclusion of this article by Michael Hudson, reposted at Popular Resistance. You can see it there. So, really, this analysis predicted what just happened in Pakistan as well. Where is it? Pakistan finds the same calculus as well. What is in it for it to stick with the U.S. strategy? So, from the U.S. vantage point, all that needs to be answered is what's in it for the local politicians and client oligarchies that we reward for delivering their countries. Basically, we're asking the royal elite of these countries to deliver them to us in the great economic splitting. U.S. diplomatic strategists viewed the looming...
Yeah, that's a fun site to hit up every month or so. I like it. I mean, it's a rabbit hole. The Viceroy, it's a rabbit hole, man. You start clicking on one of those, and then you actually start researching it yourself, and it's a rabbit hole. I've fallen down for 2 or 3 hours an afternoon. Been like, shit, I was gonna go do something today. I didn't get any errands done. Time to go to work. Fuck. But it's a good rabbit hole to go down. See, some of the things that they think are yellow are actually red. Some of the things that they think are red are actually maybe bullshit. But it's a fun rabbit hole to go down for sure.
1 second. Viewed the looming World War III as a war of economic systems. What side will countries choose? Their own economic interest and social cohesion, that's on one side. Their own fucking economic interest and social cohesion, or submission to political leaders installed by U.S. meddling, like the $5 billion that Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland bragged of having invested in Ukraine's neo-Nazi parties 8 years ago to initiate the fighting that has erupted into today's war. Basically, you have the country's own social interests and people versus U.S.-backed puppets, or if not U.S.-backed puppets, then countries that basically give in to the U.S. economic system because they don't feel they have a choice, which is what the EU is doing right now. How long will it take the rest of the world to realize that there's a global war underway with World War III on the horizon? The real problem is that by the time the world understands what's going on, the global fracture will already have enabled Russia, China, and Eurasia to create a real non-neoliberal New World Order that does not need NATO countries and which has lost trust and hope for mutual economic gains with them. The military battlefield will be littered with economic corpses. So I think what he's saying there is not that it's a problem for countries to go outside of the U.S. economic order. That in itself should be fine. It should be a part of independence of these countries to be able to do that. But I think what he's saying there at the end is how many countries are going to get destroyed in this process?
Right.
As the U.S. decides, as a fading empire in late stage.
Or not even just countries, like borders are fucking irrelevant to me. Borders are drawn by, America, America, Britain, and a few other countries have kind of decided how to draw most of these borders. Borders are bullshit, but how many fucking people are going to be destroyed? How many lives are ruined by these freaking calculations for resources and these bullying of other nations and sanctions? Sanctions are basically bullying, but they're war to the average person. They're bullying to the rich. They're sanctions are war to the poor and middle class, but they're just bullying to the rich. They don't do anything to the rich.
Capitalism, that crushing countries, fighting this war to the last Ukrainian, letting innocent civilians die either from economic hardship or from straight up bombs. The U.S. is fine with all of that. We are totally cool with it. And again, this is not to justify the Russian invasion, but this is to give you the full picture. If you want the bullshit picture, if you want the fake world, if you want all of that, then fine. Turn on CNN, turn on Fox News and MSNBC. Feel free. Just let that wash over you. Let the bullshit wash over you. But if you want to know the reality that's going on right now, it's far deeper than Ukraine. Ukraine is kind of an opening domino in a fight for U.S. petrodollar dominance.
Fighting to keep that petrodollar, sustain our currency as the world market holder. Okay, that's our battle right now. Our military is built to withstand our dollar, which is falsely sustained by petro at the moment.
First domino in the dominance, in the fight over dominance. And so far from this analysis that I've just read to you being completely different from the video I made, a week, 2 weeks ago on how this war is actually about central banking, they actually work perfectly together, those two analyses. Because Russia is going and China are creating a SWIFT system outside of U.S. banking. That is why part of why the U.S. can't control them with our economic system. And so therefore we need to pick off territories, try and balkanize the countries, try and pick off territories from China, try and cause hardship for these countries rather than creating a cooperative world where we can deal with catastrophe that is facing us all, like climate change, climate fucking chaos, climate catastrophe, like all the ways we're destroying the environment, even beyond just climate change.
I mean, just why are we having a war right now when we can try to start figuring out how we're gonna freaking feed and purpose every human being on the planet over the next 20 years when, we're gonna have constant climate refugees. Why are we creating war refugees when we're having climate refugees too? We're so fucking stupid as a fucking civilization. How is this civilized? It doesn't. War is just, how are we still having war? Come on. Yeah, I got a bigger weapon than you. No, I do. They're all made by the same fucking company.
For if there's any idiots out there who still have questions about climate chaos and climate catastrophe.
We are, yeah. We're killing the dollar right now. We are not doing it well.
Then you should still care that we're killing the environment in other ways.
And the environment.
The Amazon is going up in flames. The oceans are filling with plastic. The animals are dying. All these things should be cooperative efforts globally to deal with them. And instead, what the U.S. is trying to do is bend country to its will and create a new Cold War that will be the great economic split. And how many countries, Europe could very well suffer incredibly harshly from all of this over the next decade, 2 decades. So there you have it. I don't know if you wanted the truth or not. If you didn't want the truth, then this was the wrong episode.
I think I picked the truth for a reason, yeah. I try to find people who talk the truth. Oh, that's not him. Nah. No, we've already said that. I had a couple short clips I wanted to do. One more serious one, and then actually a couple more, yeah. But a couple more shorter clips.
Everything I did for him, and no matter.
Fuck you. Why are people acting weird? Tom Hartman, about the most centrist leftist I like to follow, but he does his research. He tries to do things very properly, but he is a little bit centrist for me. But he does a good job. So I try not to cancel people. I want to sometimes for saying stupid shit, but I try not to cancel people completely. I still try to take them in. I still try to listen to them, even though they piss me off on certain things, or a lot of things even. Unless politicians. Politicians are all corrupt, basically.
Weird thing. First of all, Olga Kazan wrote a piece over at theatlantic.com about this a week or 3 ago. And, started out by saying, Will Smith smacking Chris Rock at the Oscars, a guy arrested punching a gate agent at the Atlanta airport, people throwing tantrums while skiing. Yes, this had to do with refusing to comply with a mask mandate. This guy, got all upset.
Yeah, right? Like, yeah, we got these $135 million helicopters that can be shot down with a $5,000 handheld missile. Not Stinger, what the fuck do they call them? Javelins. These things that cost like $15,000, $25,000 maybe at what they're calling it. And so these $25,000 missiles can shoot down a $135 million helicopter. Doesn't look good.
Set and on the ski lifts, and this is just strange stuff. Disorderly, rude, unhinged conduct. People accusing each other of all kinds of weird and strange things. Americans.
Like I said, I got a couple of short clips I wanted to roll through, and but I have a little bit more of the LA Kush cake that I'm going to burn through with this one to finish it out on a really stony way. But just a few clips if you want to hang out still. A couple shorter clips and a couple more couple comedy bits.
Driving more recklessly. 2021 saw the highest number of unruly passenger incidents ever for the FAA. We're seeing car crashes and pedestrian deaths at higher rates than in the past. Healthcare workers are talking about their patients behaving more violently. I mean, in Missouri, some of the hospitals had to outfit nurses with panic buttons because of the uptick in disruptive behavior. In 2020, the U.S. murder rate rose by nearly a third, the biggest increase on record, and then rose again last year, 2021. Car thefts are up. School board meetings have melted down. So Olga Kazan asks over at theatlantic.com, what on earth is happening? And proposes a few of the thoughts on what's actually going on. Number one, we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed. For one thing, for 4 years, we had a neo-fascist grifter in the White House who threatened nuclear war with North Korea, a nuclear-armed country.
Are we not threatening? Isn't Biden right now kind of threatening nuclear war with Russia, like kind of offhand and slow-like? But isn't he? Isn't he though?
I mean, yeah, it made a few people a little nervous, and justifiably so. Plus, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people lost, almost 1 million Americans lost a loved one, a family member. Well, actually, more than 1 million. We lost almost 1 million. It's going to hit 1 million in the next month or so. 1 million people. That's tens of millions of people who know somebody or loved somebody that they have lost. And then there's these provocations. You've got staff shortages, long waits for help, mask mandates, people in their mood. Also, rudeness can be contagious. I think this is an important point that Olga is pointing out over on this Atlantic piece. People, she asked this
when I do edibles, I do them very much according to, like when I smoke flower, I don't really concentrate if it's a hybrid or sativa. I can pretty much handle most strains throughout the day. When I do indica or sativa edibles, I definitely concentrate on, if it's the daytime, I do sativa. If it's nighttime, I do indica. Because when I do daytime, when I do indica, it definitely makes me more sleepy. And if I do indica edibles, like that 3 to 4 hour mark, I will fucking sleep. And I mean, I'm talking middle of the day, I'm going to be taking a nap. And I like to take edibles at night, because then at the end of that edible, if I take an indica edible right now, in 3 hours, I am out like a light, like out cold. And I have a very hard time going to sleep. But with that kind of sleep cycle, I can take an edible and go, in 3 hours, I'm going to be sleepy. So in 2 hours and 45 minutes, I can power everything down. No TV, no lights, no internet. Put my phone on the charger 5 feet away from me, 6 feet away from me. And I know in 15 minutes, I'm actually going to be asleep. It's, indica edibles really changed the way I went to sleep. Melatonin fucked me up. But yeah, indica edibles are the way I sleep. And sativa edibles are more my daytime work time. I like to take like microdosing, 10 milligrams, 5 milligrams of microdosing for work, so that I can kind of stay level and have my blood sugar and anxiety kind of mellowed out through THC and CBD. But yeah, and obviously I smoke a ton, so 10 milligrams for me is very much microdosing. Like I smoke a lot. 10 milligrams is not a lot for me.
Psychology professor at the University of Wisconsin, who noted people who witness rudeness are 3 times less likely to help someone else. People are picking up on rudeness from social media. In fact, it was interesting yesterday we were watching France 24 about the French elections. And they were just asking people on the street, what do you think about what's going on? And one of them said, social media, particularly Facebook and Twitter, have just been pounding Macron and elevating Marine Le Pen. And of course, it's bots. In fact, a lot of it appears to be Russian bots that are trying to promote a right-wing candidate in France. Because Marine Le Pen in the past has said, let's get out of NATO. So this is not just happening in the United States. Also, people in America during the pandemic were drinking more. They were doing more drugs. Americans have been drinking 14% more than before the pandemic. We're also buying a lot more guns. We bought something like 30 million more guns in 2020, which spiked the gun murder rate. And then we bought another, more guns in 2021.
They always buy so many more guns when it's literally like an NRA thing. The NRA actually wants Democrats to win every once in a while, because when the Democrats win, they always promote like they're going to take our guns away, and so people go out and buy massive amounts of guns. So anytime a Democrat wins, Republicans run out and buy more guns. It's always crazy to watch the spikes happen, and they're like they're going to take our guns, and it's like, dude, you guys are buying record amounts right now. And there's more guns in this country than there are people, so shut
Another
up.
spike in the gun murder rate. Kids stopped going to school, their parents stopped going to work, so we weren't having contact with other people. We weren't having these social interactions. People stopped going to church. And all of this social isolation kind of brings out the worst in all of us. And then here comes Jerry Springer. He was on, my friend and colleague Dino Badala's show here on Sirius XM. He said that his talk show, he believes, and he's kind of owning this. He's feeling guilty about this. Jerry Springer, former mayor of Cleveland, I think it was. But he did this talk show where he would bring on people who would throw chairs at each other and yell and scream and all this kind of stuff. And he told Dean, he said, the behavior of some of the people on the show is exactly Donald Trump. He said, however, the people on my show, they had enough sense not to run for president. He talks about what made Trump unique. He said the only thing that separates Trump
That's pretty fucking funny.
From the guests on my show, this is Jerry Springer talking to Dino Badala on Sirius XM. He said the only thing that separates Trump from the guests on my show is the fact that he had this delusion that he knew how to run the world or run the country, when in fact he knows nothing about how to run a country. And we paid the price for that. It's interesting. In 2018, and he also gets into the tax cuts.
Yeah, no, it is kind of weird to see people 20, 30, 50 guns, like the insane amount of guns people have. I happen to know a few people like that. People in my family personally, my personal close family, I don't have any. My sister doesn't have any. My dad would probably be up in that 8 to 10 range. But that is my father hunts. So he has, a shotgun for this and a shotgun for this. 4 different hunting rifles, small, very small caliber, mid caliber, large caliber. And I think he has 1 handgun. He has different, he doesn't have an assault rifle. He has nothing that's automatic. He has everything that he has would be less than 8 shells probably. Those hunting rifles have 4 to 6 depending. We have a couple antiques. So he might have 12 guns with a couple antiques and, the different calibers. And I get it, I guess. I get that. I definitely get that. Personally, I would say I would like to have a handgun maybe for my hiking experiences. Yeah, because when I hike, sometimes I'm a little nervous about rattlers in the Smokies or bobcats on the West Coast. So I've had a few experiences where I've been a little chills on my arm, going, man, a large caliber handgun might be good in this hiking situation. But I definitely don't get the 30. If somebody has 4 hunting rifles, but then they have 24 assault rifles, assault weapons, handguns, and they hunt one thing per 2 weeks of the year, but they shoot weapons all year because they gotta shoot. That's a little out there for me. I do not understand that, and I think that's a shadow that they maybe need to fight. They might need to work on themselves, or look at some things about themselves if they're really that person. This was a week
On
ago.
MyHeritage, you can build your family tree and make amazing discoveries about your family history really easily. Let me show you how.
Do you know about this?
Poor farmer movements and social groups in the 3rd day of protests against corruption. They are also demonstrating against the process to select the country's
There's
new
been
attorney
Central
general.
American
Our
and Guatemala
correspondent
people
Santiago
walking
Rodon
out
tells us more.
against government corruption.
Representatives from farmers and social organizations
Pretty
marched
cool.
through the main streets of the Guatemalan capital to protest against corruption and the re-election of Consuelo Porras as Attorney General of the Public Prosecutor's Office. We're asking for an end to corruption and impunity. Thanks to Telesur, the whole world will know that here in Guatemala there is a corrupt pact that refuses to leave and continues in power. They have come out to protest because they consider that there are anomalies in the ongoing election process to select a new prosecutor of the public ministry. And this is confirmed by a prosecutor who claims to suffer political persecution because of this case. Unfortunately, the members of the postulating commission have been co-opted, and they have stated that they are not going to take